I'm Molly Ball, and I'm so pleased to be joined today by House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Speaker Pelosi, thank you for being with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So let's start out with the protests across the country sparked by the killing of George Floyd. This isn't the first time people have risen up to demand change, but do you think this time is different?
Well, I think it's different. It's more universally embraced. It is one time where I think people truly believe that their presence will make a difference, that they know their power, and that is why they keep persisting day in and day out. I think that we just crossed a threshold with people seeing a murder, really actually a murder, right on TV before their very eyes, as part of a pattern of injustice in terms of the police department, not to paint everyone with the same brush, but nonetheless, just time for a change.
And the Democrats have unveiled the legislation to reform police forces. Do you think it has a realistic chance of becoming law?
I do, because I do believe in public sentiment. As many have heard me say over and over, Lincoln said public sentiment is everything. With it, you can accomplish almost anything. Without it, practically nothing. And the public sentiment is very clear that while we understand the need for public safety, and we all support that, we don't want to have injustice and abuse of power by the police when it comes to especially to addressing the safety concerns of the minority community.
Have the Republicans given you any indication what they might be willing to support?
Our chair, I'm very proud of Karen Bass, the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, who also serves as the chair of the Judiciary Committee, Subcommittee on Crime. So she's part of the debate that goes on this subject in the caucus and in the committee. And they have been making overtures to her, which would be the appropriate place to do that.
Do you think they're sincere about wanting to contribute to this effort?
Well, I hope so. I don't think that they're oblivious to what is going on in the public, that people want to see action. I can tell you, as one who has wandered out there, that they want action. It's one thing to be supportive, but they want to see some change happen. And these are not just my constituents, they're everyone's constituents in the country. So again, I think people believe that they can make a difference and that they will be heard and they will be seen. And if our Republican colleagues are oblivious to that, it will be to their peril.
Are there any provisions of the bill that you or that Chairwoman Bass consider non-negotiable?
Well, we think the whole bill is wisely crafted. This isn't something, we came to this expeditiously because these bills have been in the hopper for a long time, especially our Congressional Black Caucus from its origin has always been addressing these issues that relate to police brutality. And it is so when we're talking about racial profiling, when we're talking about no chokeholds, when we're talking about no warrantless house or intruding into people's homes and the rest, when we talk about some of the provisions in there, they've been thought out for a long time, and they make a complete picture of what needs to be done to hold the police accountable.
What do you say to the activists who are calling to go further or to defund police in some cases?
Well, I think we should go further. That is to say, there are provisions that relate to Violence Against Women Act. We think that we should pass that. We passed it in the House. It's in the Grim Reaper's graveyard right now, but we think we should pass the Violence Against Women Act. Domestic violence is an issue that is a cause for concern that police or firefighters, everyone is called in on, and that causes danger to life. The issues that relate to mental health, we need a very strong mental health initiative in our country. We know that. And I think that would be helpful because I don't think that our law enforcement people should be taking responsibility completely for the mental health and well-being of the American people. Many of the people in prison now are have mental health issues. So we really have to address some of this in a little different way than just law enforcement.
What about defunding police, though?
Well, it isn't. We need to have more resources to do what we need to do to fund the Violence Against Women Act, to fund our initiatives on mental health, to address some larger issues which contribute to the injustices that exist in our society. One would be homelessness. One would be, again, more low-income housing, issues that relate to disparity in healthcare in our country, highlighted now by the coronavirus, taking a disproportionate toll on people of color in our society. The HEROES Act goes directly after that. Environmental justice, that if you live in certain communities, you'll be subjected to pollution in the air you breathe, the water you drink, and make you more susceptible to something like a pandemic when it comes along, but when it doesn't, still make you susceptible to other diagnoses. So again, whether it's education, whether it's economy, whether it's jobs, whatever form of economic involvement, business creation, access to credit, the list goes on of injustices that we must address and that we do address. Some of it in the HEROES Act, some of it in what we've done in affordable care and what we'll do for our affordable care enhancement legislation in the weeks ahead, as well as our issue about building the infrastructure of America in a green way to address some of these environmental injustices as well, which become health issues.
The president and other Republicans have accused Democrats of wanting to dismantle law enforcement entirely. Are you concerned that that idea could damage Democrats politically?
No, I don't think anything is about politics in this regard. I think we have to do what we believe is right. And what is right is for us to, and this has been really the major difference between Democrats and Republicans historically, that we have been on the side of justice, liberty and justice for all. And justice just doesn't mean in the Pledge of Allegiance. It means in how we conduct our business, how we access to housing and healthcare, as I mentioned before. We have some underlying causes which contribute to some of the issues that relate to law enforcement that we have to address. We don't seem to have too much support on the Republican side, but hopefully the strong message being sent by those who are demonstrating night in and day out across the country, that message will reach them. I always say our inside maneuvering can only get us just so far. It's the outside mobilization that makes all the difference in the world, and we need all the difference in the world right now.
What about the police unions? Are they part of the problem, and does something need to be done to rein them in?
No, I had actually a very constructive conversation with head of one of the unions, and they put out a statement which I thought was very constructive in following up on the Justice and Policing Act. So I do think that they know that there's some things that have to change and want to be part of that conversation.
Let's look forward to the election. There was a primary held in Georgia, especially. There were long lines, a lot of irregularities reported. How concerned are you about chaos in November when it comes time to vote?
Well, let's hope that what happened in Georgia is a wake-up call for everyone around the country. What I found disconcerting about Georgia, it was the problems were more prevalent in low-income neighborhoods, neighborhoods of people of color, than they were in more affluent white neighborhoods, and that's just not right. Anybody would know that that's just not fair. I heard the lieutenant governor of Georgia say on TV, my son went, no, it took him 20 minutes. Well, I'm sure in his neighborhood it did. But that wasn't the case in other neighborhoods where it was a matter of 3-4 hours at a time of the coronavirus, a matter of health as well as the health of our democracy. So we have to be very vigilant because the attempts to suppress the vote are real in our country. There's a playbook on it. You just see the Republican playbook on it, and you see that they're afraid of the vote. But there are plenty of Republicans in our country who want us to have a fair vote, who want to vote by mail, who want to vote at home, and who are part of a bipartisan initiative to support what we're trying to do in the HEROES Act, which is to get more resources and more opportunities spelled out. Same-day registration, every registered voter being mailed an absentee ballot, access for those who want to vote in person to do so with plenty of advance time to do so. The list goes on, but that is bipartisan.
Joe Biden, now officially the Democratic nominee. What do you think of his campaign so far, and has he been visible enough during the pandemic?
I think Joe Biden is doing a great job, and he's going to be a great president. Obviously, he's doing well. He's leading in every poll and leading in the battleground states as well. We're very honored and proud to have him as the top of the ticket. I know today he would win. We'd win the House even bigger than now. We'd win the Senate, but the election isn't today. And I think that you never know. When I think back 4 months or something, we never would have known that we'd be so deep into the coronavirus, that we would be mourning the death of George Floyd in such a sad way. But I think that the way that Joe Biden has risen to the that's where he is. He is a person of empathy and a person of love. And I think that has clearly been demonstrated. And the contrast between the sitting president and Joe Biden is so vast, and I think that's why the polls reflect that in such a drastic way.
You're a longtime advocate for women's representation in politics. Are you pleased that Biden's pledged to put a woman on the ticket?
Yes, I think it's absolutely great. And any one of them would be great. The names I've heard, I don't know if I know all the names, but the names that seem to be floated out there, all of them have been, I think, have been great, and it is. It's going to be pretty exciting. It's historic. I mean, I was there and was chair of the convention, the host committee for the convention in 1984, and when Geraldine Ferrara's name was placed in nomination for vice president, it was like something we had never seen before. It was thunderous, the response, how people were so excited about it, and that was a long time ago. 36 years ago, something like that. And so the fact that Hillary Clinton was our nominee for president was such a thrill for women across America. And so now to have a woman on this ticket, we expected to win with Hillary. We know we're going to win this time. It's pretty exciting.
Do you have a favorite? Is there someone you'd like to see?
You expect me to tell you that?
I do. I'm asking.
I like them all. I think they're all great. I think they'll all be spectacularly great. And I just want it to be, somebody who helps Joe Biden become president of the United States. I think any one of them fills that bill. So I feel comfortable with any one of them. And I know that the decision is his, so I wouldn't even think of making a suggestion.
Do you agree with those who've called for putting a woman of color specifically in that position?
I think that he has a good choice of candidates across the board. I don't know that we have to get any more specific than that, but I feel confident about the direction he may go in. We'll see. But I do think that it's important to note that every women of color, of every color and region are being considered. So everyone is being considered. And I think that's an important step forward. It isn't as if, well, we didn't have a chance because we weren't even on the list. No, it seems like they have a pretty broad array of women, whether they're legislators or governors or heartland or coastal or whatever diversity that they bring to it, that he has a good array of people from whom to choose. And I feel confident that he will choose the candidate who will be a great vice president. He knows that job very well and will also help us win the White House, which is absolutely, totally essential.
Many advocates say that the 1994 crime bill contributed to a lot of the disparities in criminal justice that we still see today. Do you regret your vote for that legislation?
No, I don't at all. I join most of my colleagues in supporting it. The Violence Against Women Act was in that bill. The Brady bill, which we had been fighting for a long time, was in that bill. I think some of the concerns in that bill were exacerbated by the so-called welfare reform bill that kind of was not a good combination, in my view. I did not vote for that.
What is the status of the negotiations for the next package of coronavirus relief?
Well, every time I see a statement by the administration or the Republicans in the Senate, it gets closer to what we want to do. First, they weren't doing absolutely nothing, never nothing. Now, maybe $1 trillion, but maybe not until July. And we're saying no, more and sooner. But the fact is this: if we do not act in a very serious way now, the problem is only going to get worse. Worse in terms of the virus, and worse in terms of our economy, worse in terms of our GDP. To put this off is a very big mistake. Don't take it from me. Listen to the chairman of the Fed. The money is never going to be cheaper in terms of the interest rates now. And the more we can invest in honoring our heroes, our healthcare workers, our first responders, our transit, our teachers, our food workers, and the rest. Honor our heroes by putting that money in state and local government, very important. Secondly, open our economy by testing, tracing, treating, social distancing, very important to open our economy and to do so in a way that keeps people healthy. And third, put money in the pockets of the American people with our direct payments, so important, as well as unemployment insurance, food stamps, et cetera, all of which, everything I mentioned is a stimulus to the economy. Everything I mentioned has been supported by the Republicans in one form or another in previous bills. So this isn't asking them to do anything they haven't done before, just more so and soon, because it's absolutely essential. Of course, in the bill, we also have our funding for voting by mail, which has bipartisan support throughout the country. We have money for the post office, which is the most popular institution in government anyway. That would be over 90% for our postal service, which means so much to our veterans who get 90% of their medicine through the postal service, and so many other people in our country who are well served by that, and to have a strong OSHA safety issue for those who are risking their lives to save lives throughout this coronavirus crisis and even beyond that. So we feel that the bill is very focused, very deliberate in what it sets out to do. And I just make one point, and that is all the money that we're doing for state and local government. And you can go to speaker.gov/Heroes Act and see what it means to you and your community, your state or your locality, and the rest. And when you see that all over the country, helping to meet the needs to address the cost of the coronavirus outlays, as well as the coronavirus loss of revenue for states, realize that it's only cost half as much as a Republican tax scam to give a tax break to 83% of the benefit going to the top 1% in our country, adding $2 trillion to the national debt for our children to pay for. This aid to states and localities only half that. And it is a stimulus to the economy.
Some people have pointed to the unexpectedly strong jobs numbers last week as proof we don't actually have to do more for the economy. You don't seem to share that view?
No, of course not. Well, how do you think we got there? We got there by the investing that we had done in the previous coronavirus legislation. And we were checking those numbers to be, hopefully they are what they say they are. But nonetheless, they would not be any, things would be much worse had we not taken those measures. The Fed now is spending trillions of dollars to shore up the stock market. Look at the stock market. Why is that happening? Well, because the cost of credit is so low, it is all connected. It's all connected to the bond sector and the rest of that. Well, we should be spending billions of dollars to bolster America's working families as well. If we don't, it's only going to be worse. If we don't, we're not meeting their needs. If we don't, it's really shameful because we can stop the spread of this virus. We can support our heroes. We can put money in the pockets of the American people, which will be a stimulus to the economy. The sooner, the better. But they make the exact wrong argument to say, look, things are good, so we shouldn't do any more. No, things are good in terms of those particular statistics because of what we have done. It's still a huge unemployment rate that must come down.
These are dark times in a lot of ways. So what gives you hope?
When I'm asked about hope, I always say the same thing. Hope is there sitting where it always has been, right between faith and love. Faith, hope, and charity. What gives me hope is my faith in the goodness, the charity of people. I believe America's heart is full of love, that people really care. We've seen that in the past weeks, haven't we now, on the streets of our country and really throughout the world. But speaking just about our country, about America, I have hope in the goodness of people. I think America's heart is full of love. Faith in that love is what gives me hope. And people wouldn't be out there if they didn't believe, if they didn't have faith in the goodness of others. That gives them hope to show up and know that their presence will make a big difference.
Speaker Pelosi, thank you so much for joining us today.
Pleasure. Thank you so much.